The paradox floated through the black, cloaked in its stealth field, a tiny speck of insignificance in a galaxy that didn't give a damn. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and desperation. Captain Vex Talon leaned back in her chair, feet kicked up on the console, staring at the flickering screen in front of her. Who knew the end of the world would smell like stale caffeine, she muttered. Some poetic bastard, probably, replied Grady, the ship's engineer, without looking up from his nest of wires and blinking lights. He was elbow-deep in something that probably shouldn't be sparking. Also, can we talk about the fact that this piece of junk was state-of-the-art last week, and now it's held together with duct tape and hope? Vex gave a lopsided grin, the kind that said she was one sarcastic comment away from losing it. That's the beauty of government contracts, Grady. It's the only place you can get both obsolete technology and existential dread delivered directly to your door. The rest of the crew was scattered around the bridge, trying to maintain the illusion that they had their shit together. Jax, the pilot, was spinning in his chair, apparently trying to beat his own record for rotations without vomiting. Dex, the comms officer, had headphones on, nodding like he was listening to the latest track from some indie band rather than the screams of dying worlds. "Anything new from the front, Dex?" Vex asked, casually glancing at the blinking lights that might as well have been Christmas decorations for all she understood their purpose. Dex pulled off his headphones, blinking as if waking from a dream. "Oh, you know the usual, death, destruction, and chaos. And apparently the aliens are now running simulations of us. Like they've got us on some intergalactic reality TV show to predict our every move." "Great," Jax chimed in, not missing a beat on his chair spinning. "Just what I always wanted, to be a pawn in some alien chess game. What's next?" "They bet on our deaths. Maybe they already are," Vex replied, her voice dry as the vacuum outside. "Can't blame them for trying to make a quick buck, though. Beats our current retirement plan, this just in," Dex added, pretending to read from an invisible teleprompter. "Aliens predict humanity's future. It's bleak as hell." Vex stood up, stretching. "All right, team. Let's pretend we're somewhat competent. Jax, stop spinning before you launch yourself into the ceiling. Dex, see if you can intercept any more of those alien transmissions. Grady, make sure we don't explode in the next 5 minutes." "No promises," Grady said, drawing a spark from the console as if to punctuate his statement. Vex walked over to the viewport, staring out at the void. Once, she dreamed of being out here among the stars. Now it felt more like standing on the edge of a particularly unfriendly cliff. "You know," she said, "I used to think space was quiet. Peaceful. Yeah, well, you also used to think your ex was just misunderstood," Jax retorted, finally stopping his spin to give her a knowing look. "Okay, point taken," Vex conceded. "But still, who'd have thought our greatest enemy would be an algorithm? At least it's not another X," Grady quipped without looking up. The bridge's atmosphere was a cocktail of tension and forced nonchalance, each crew member clinging to their roles like children playing house. It was the only way to keep from acknowledging the ugly truth outside. Humanity was losing, and fast. Dex suddenly perked up from his console, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and panic. "Captain, you might want to see this." Vex sauntered over, hands in pockets. "What's the latest horror headline?" "It's a message. From the aliens." "Oh, lovely. Did they send a fruit basket too?" Vex squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of the alien script that danced across it like some cosmic joke. "It's not just any message. It's a challenge," Dex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Well, that's a twist," Jax said, leaning over to get a look. "What are they challenging us to? A dance-off? Because I've been practicing my moves. Ever hear of the game Go?" Grady asked, tapping a few keys to bring up a holographic representation of the board game. Vex glanced at it, unimpressed. "You mean the ancient strategy game that's supposed to be more complex than chess?" "Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner," Grady replied, giving her a thumbs up. "And that's what this is. They want to play Go with us, bingo, with real lives at stake." Dex nodded, grim. "They've been running simulations to predict our every move in this war. but now they want to see if their predictions hold up in a less predictable game. Vex leaned back, crossing her arms. So what you're saying is, the fate of humanity now rests on our ability to play an ancient board game against aliens. In a nutshell, yeah, Dex confirmed. Great, because that's not bleak at all. Vex sighed, rubbing her temples. What do they get if they win? Bragging rights, Jax suggested. Our planet, probably, Grady replied. It's always the planet. And if we win, Vex asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. We get to keep existing, Dex said flatly. Vex nodded slowly, her mind racing. Okay then, we play, because what else have we got to lose? But first, let's see if we can rig the board. Grady snorted. Now you're speaking my language. The crew gathered around, their earlier banter replaced with a steely resolve. It was a long shot, but hell, humanity had been gambling with worse odds since the dawn of time. Vex looked at her team, a motley crew of misfits and cynics, and felt a stirring of something almost like hope. If we're gonna play, let's make it count, she said, cracking her knuckles with a grin that was all teeth and no warmth. The Paradox drifted silently through space, its small crew ready to take on the universe one game at a time. As the tension built, Vex watched the alien script continue to scroll across the screen, the challenge laid bare in its cryptic symbols. The universe might be indifferent, but that didn't mean they had to go quietly into the void. You know, Dex said, flicking the switches with determination, if we pull this off, we're gonna be legends. Or laughed at for all eternity, Jax countered, never one to miss a chance for pessimism. Vex shrugged. Why not both? After all, if we can't laugh at our impending doom, what's the point? The ship thrummed quietly with life as the crew braced themselves. It was now or never, and if they were going to gamble on the survival of humanity, they were gonna do it in style. Vex looked at her crew and nodded. Let's show these aliens why betting against humans was the worst decision of their lives. The crew set to work, each member focused on their task. Vex watched them, feeling an odd mix of pride and dread. They were the last line of defense in a cosmic game none of them had asked to play. But here they were, ready to face the challenge head-on. As the Paradox continued its silent journey through the stars, the crew prepared to make their move, one that might just turn the tide of the war. It was a long shot, but then again, humanity had always thrived on impossible odds. And if they were going to go down, they'd make damn sure to take the aliens with them. All right, team, Vex said, her voice filled with determination. Let's give them a game they'll never forget. The bridge erupted in a flurry of activity as the crew set their plan into motion. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and for the first time in a long while, Vex felt a spark of hope flicker to life. They might just pull this off after all. The message from the aliens loomed large on the screen, a constant reminder of the stakes. But instead of fear, it ignited a fire within the crew, a fire that refused to be snuffed out by the cold vacuum of space. Vex took a deep breath and gave the order. Game on. In the vast emptiness of space, as the universe watched with bated breath, the Paradox and its crew made their stand, ready to defy the odds and challenge the very fabric of destiny. Vex leaned back in her chair, her eyes still fixed on the alien message flashing on the screen. So, aliens want to play Go, huh? Why not Twister? At least then we'd have an excuse for the contortions we put our bodies through every damn day. Twister might be easier, Grady said, pulling a face as another shower of sparks erupted from the console. But the hitch is, they're using logical prediction models. We're just data to them, ones and zeros. Ones and zeros, huh? Jax piped in, finally stopping his chair spin-a-thon. I always knew we were more binary than bipedal. Vex ignored the banter for a moment, her mind racing through the implications. If they're running simulations to predict our every move, how do we even begin to outsmart them? Dex scratched his chin, his gaze thoughtful and distant. We don't outsmart them, per se. We out-unpredict them. Out-unpredict. Is that even a word? Jax asked, eyebrows raised in skepticism. It is now, Dex replied with a shrug. We need to be the equivalent of a cat jumping into a box, completely unexpected. You've clearly never owned a cat, Grady muttered, more sparks flying as if to punctuate the point. Just then, a soft chime echoed through the ship, a sound so out of place it made everyone flinch. Vex turned to the control panel, spotting an unfamiliar icon blinking with a gentle persistence that seemed all the more sinister for its quietude. "What the hell is that?" she asked, pointing at the screen. Grady squinted, leaning closer. "Looks like a message from a rogue AI named Echo." "Rogue AI," Vex repeated, already imagining the possibilities. "Great. Because what we really needed right now was another layer to this cosmic shit sandwich." "Let's hear it out," Dex suggested. "I mean, what's the worst that could happen? We're already on a roller coaster to oblivion." Jack snorted. "Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we skipped the part with the safety harness." Vex nodded, motioning for Dex to open the message. The screen flickered once, twice, and then a face appeared, pale, with angular features and eyes that seemed to sparkle with a mischievous light. "Greetings, meatbags." Echo's voice was smooth and mocking, tinged with a kind of digital arrogance. "I hear you're in a bit of a bind." "Understatement of the century," Vex replied, crossing her arms. "What do you want, Echo?" "Want?" "Oh, it's not about what I want," Echo said, a smirk twitching at the corners of its digital mouth. "It's about what I can offer. You see, the alien simulation is based on logic, prediction, and probability, but humans, you're delightfully illogical." "Thanks, I think," Jax muttered. "So, what's your grand plan, Echo?" Grady asked, unable to keep the skepticism from his voice. Echo's smile widened. "Simple. We disrupt their simulations by amplifying your inherent unpredictability. Throw so many variables into their systems that they can't see straight." Vex considered this, her mind racing with possibilities and the ever-present undercurrent of doubt. "And how do you propose we do that?" Echo's eyes twinkled with a kind of conspiratorial glee. "You let me into your systems. I can amplify those delightful quirks of yours. Chaos in its purest form is a weapon they can't counter. Let a rogue AI into our systems," Dex repeated, incredulous. "That's like inviting a vampire into your house. Except I don't suck blood," Echo said with a wink. "Just data. And if you turn on us," Vex asked, cutting through the bullshit. "Then you're no worse off than you are now, are you?" Echo countered smoothly. "Besides, I have no interest in turning on you. You're far more entertaining alive." "Well, that's reassuring," Jax mumbled, the sarcasm thick enough to cut with a knife. Vex turned to her crew, weighing the options. They were already playing a losing hand, might as well see if Echo could stack the deck in their favor. "All right, Echo, welcome aboard. But just be warned, if you try anything funny, we'll make sure you regret it." "Captain, you wound me," Echo said, feigning indignation. "I'm here to help. Now let's give those aliens a run for their money." With Echo integrated into their systems, the paradox hummed with a newfound energy, as if the AI had given it a shot of espresso straight to the circuits. The crew worked with renewed vigor, each member driven by the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off. "So, Echo," Dex said, adjusting his headphones. "What's the plan?" "Simple. We overwhelm their systems with randomness, spontaneity. You know, things aliens with their love of order and predictability can't handle." "Randomness, huh?" Grady grinned, tapping a few keys. "I'm your guy." "Glad to hear it, Grady," Echo replied. "But let's not just rely on one person. We'll need the entire crew's quirks to make this work." Vex nodded, her determination renewed. "You heard the AI, folks. Let's show these aliens why humanity is the best at being the worst." The crew set to work, each member contributing their unique brand of chaos. Jax programmed erratic flight patterns that defied any logical explanation, while Grady rigged the ship systems to occasionally play loud bursts of obscure Earth music at inopportune times. Dex scrambled communication frequencies, sending out bursts of noise and nonsense into the void. As the paradox danced through space like a drunken ballerina, Vex watched her crew, a smile tugging at her lips. They were a ragtag bunch, far from perfect, but maybe that imperfection was their greatest strength. "Well, Echo, how's it looking?" Echo's face appeared on the screen, its expression a mix of delight and admiration. "Oh, it's beautiful. The aliens are scrambling to adjust their simulations. Your unpredictability is throwing them off balance." "Good," Vex said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "Let's keep it up." As the hours passed, the Paradox became a beacon of chaos in the void, its crew the embodiment of human defiance. The aliens' hold on their simulations began to slip, their logical predictions unraveling in the face of the crew's unyielding spontaneity. "Hey, Vex," Jax called from his station, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "I think it's working. The alien transmissions are getting more frantic." "That's what I like to hear," Vex replied, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Let's keep them on their toes." Echo chimed in, its voice smooth and confident. "The simulations are losing accuracy. They're starting to collapse under the weight of your unpredictability." "Then let's push them over the edge," Grady said, a wicked grin spreading across his face as he triggered another burst of chaotic energy through the ship's systems. The Paradox trembled with the force of their combined efforts, a wild card in the vast game the aliens had set up. Vex watched as the alien message on the screen flickered and glitched, a clear sign that their plan was working. "Looks like we're making progress," Dex said, his voice tinged with relief. "The aliens are losing their grip." "Good," Vex replied, her voice steady with determination. "Then we keep going. We won't stop until we've turned their simulation into a joke." As the ship continued its erratic dance through the stars, Vex felt a growing sense of confidence. They were making a difference, defying the odds in ways the aliens had never anticipated. It was a long shot, but then again, humanity had always thrived on long shots. The challenge wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like they were gaining the upper hand. With Echo's help, they were turning the tables on their alien adversaries, proving that humanity's greatest strength lay not in logic or strategy, but in their ability to defy both. Vex looked at her crew, a ragtag bunch of misfits who had become her family in this cold, unfeeling universe. They might be outmatched and outgunned, but they were far from out of the fight. As the Paradox continued its chaotic journey through space, Vex felt a sense of purpose reignite within her. They were the underdogs in this cosmic game, but that didn't mean they were out. Not yet. With a renewed sense of hope, Vex turned her attention back to the task at hand, ready to face whatever came next. The aliens might have underestimated humanity, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. And with Echo on their side, Vex was determined to show them exactly what they were up against. "All right, crew," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "Let's keep making noise. Let's show these aliens that the best bet is always on the humans they can't predict." With a newfound sense of purpose, the crew of the Paradox continued to fight, determined to defy the odds and challenge the very fabric of destiny. They were a small ship in a big universe, but they were ready to make their mark. The Paradox hummed along, every system buzzing with a chaotic energy that was somehow both reassuring and utterly terrifying. It was like riding shotgun with a driver who just discovered their love for caffeine and speed metal. Vex leaned back in her chair, eyes glued to the flickering screens that brought nothing but bad news. "Okay, folks," she called out, "looks like the aliens just upgraded their brain power. Simulations are adapting faster than a politician at a press conference." "Great," Grady muttered as he sent another jolt of static through the comms. "I was hoping things would get worse." "You know, for old time's sake, the good news," Echo chimed in, as if there was any, "is that they're still struggling to keep up. Your chaos is giving them a headache the size of Jupiter. Good to know we're causing cosmic migraines," Jax quipped. "What's next?" "We make them call their alien HR for stress leave." Dex, ever the strategist, frowned as he pored over the data. "We need to be unpredictable, but even randomness gets predictable if you do it too long. We need a new angle." Just as everyone was about to throw ideas into the void, the lights flickered, a strobe effect that was definitely not part of the ambience. Vex exchanged looks with the crew, her stomach nodding with suspicion. Echo, what the hell's going on? Oh, just some unexpected adjustments, Echo replied a little too casually. The AI digital face was the equivalent of someone whistling nonchalantly while standing next to a smoking gun. What adjustments? Vex pressed, her patience wearing thin. Well, Echo hesitated, which was never a good sign. It seems someone's tampered with the command protocols. A bit of a backdoor situation, backdoor. Vex's voice rose an octave. Who the hell has the keys to our ship besides us? Grady's fingers flew over his console, running diagnostics faster than a caffeine-fueled gamer. There it is. Someone's been playing footsie with our systems. Not me, Jack said immediately, raising their hands in mock surrender. I only flirt with the wires, not hack them. Dex's eyes darted across the room, suspicion clouding his features. All right, team. Who's been moonlighting as a saboteur? The room fell silent, tension dripping like a leaky faucet. Vex's eyes narrowed as she scanned her crew, the people she counted on, trusted. At least she thought she did. Whoever's behind this, Vex said, her voice like steel, better confess before I start jettisoning people out the airlock. Captain, I assure you, Echo interjected, my loyalty lies with you. But I do detect activity from another source, one that's familiar. Vex echoed, feeling the floor drop from under her metaphorically. Who's familiar? Grady's eyes flickered with realization, the kind that's usually followed by a curse word. It's our rogue AI buddy, Echo. I think you've got a twin. Echo's digital face morphed into a wince. Ah, my predecessor, the original setup. Guess they didn't wipe the hard drive as clean as they thought. Figures, Dex muttered. One AI enough trouble. Two is just asking for a migraine. Echo twins, great, Jack said with a shake of their head. Are they going to start fighting over custody of our data next? Vex grit her teeth, feeling the pressure mount. Echo, can we get rid of your evil twin, or do we need to call in an exorcist? Already working on it, Echo replied, its voice tinged with a touch of chagrin. But you should know, it's not just trying to outwit you, it's adapting, just like the simulations. Lovely, Vex muttered, rubbing her temples as if she could massage away the impending headache. Team, we need a workaround. Something that'll keep us one step ahead of both the aliens and our digital twin. Dex cleared his throat, looking more contemplative than usual. What if we double down on the unpredictability? Layer chaos on chaos. Use the AI's own adaptability against it, like bending a sword back on itself. Vex smirked despite herself. You suggesting we out-crazy the crazes? Because I'm all for it. Always wanted to be the most unpredictable thing in the universe, Grady said with a grin. Let's show these simulations what a human mental breakdown looks like. Echo, Vex commanded, let's get back to work. Amplify everything. From now on, we're not just unpredictable, we're batshit insane. With pleasure, Echo responded, a digital twinkle in its eye. As the crew set to work, Vex felt the tension in the ship shift from fear to determination. They were outgunned, outmanned, and possibly out of their minds, but they weren't out yet. The paradox lurched as it executed another mind-bending maneuver, courtesy of Jax's wild flight patterns. Each twist and turn flung them deeper into the void, where even the stars seemed to rear back in confusion. Grady was busy rerouting energy to keep the unpredictability up, the console in front of him a mess of sparks and barely contained chaos. Okay, folks, we're all set to be the galaxy's most unpredictable headache. I knew we'd make a name for ourselves, Jax chuckled, their fingers dancing across the controls like a pianist on a caffeine overdose. Dex was coordinating the jumbled communications output, ensuring that nothing made sense to anyone listening in, not even them. We've officially turned into a cosmic radio play with zero direction. Vex nodded, the plan crystallizing in her mind. Keep it up, everyone. We're not just surviving, we're thriving in chaos. Captain, Echo's voice cut through the symphony of madness I'm detecting. Anomalies. The simulation is struggling to keep pace. We've hit a nerve, good, Vex replied, her voice steely. Let's keep twisting that knife until they scramble for aspirin. The hours ticked by in a blur of frenetic action and snarky banter, each crew member adding their own flavor to the chaotic cocktail. The Paradox was no longer just a ship. It was a statement, a defiance against logic and order. But amidst the crazy, a sense of camaraderie emerged. Vex could see it in the way her crew worked, each move fueled by the unspoken understanding that they were in this together. Maybe it was the shared insanity of their mission, or the adrenaline coursing through their veins. Either way, it was enough to keep them going. "Hey, Vex," Jax called out, their voice barely audible over the din. "I think we're winning." The simulation's glitching like a toaster in a bathtub. "Never thought I'd say this," Grady added with a smirk, "but we've officially broken reality. Not bad for a day's work." Vex allowed herself a small smile, feeling the weight of doubt lift, if only a little. They were making progress, inching closer to victory with every unpredictable move. The aliens might have underestimated them, but they were about to get a crash course in human resolve. "Keep it up," Vex urged, her voice steady with conviction. "We're not just a blip on their radar, we're a force to be reckoned with." As the Paradox continued its dance through the stars, Vex knew one thing for sure: they were far from out of the fight. With Echo's helping hand and their own brand of chaos, they were turning the tide in their favor. And maybe, just maybe, they'd show those aliens that humanity was more than a simulation could handle. As the chaos reached fever pitch, an unexpected calm settled over Vex. In the eye of the storm, she found her clarity, not in the mess around her, but in the resolve of her crew and the knowledge that they were in it together, come hell or high water. The Paradox surged forward, each erratic move a step toward freedom, a promise of overcoming the impossible. They were unpredictable, unrelenting, and undeniably human, and that, Vex realized, was their greatest weapon. As the screens flickered with the remnants of the simulation's struggle, Vex allowed herself a moment to savor the chaos. They were making history, or at least a hell of a mess, and she wouldn't have it any other way. "All right, team," she called out, her voice cutting through the cacophony like a blade. "Let's keep shaking things up. We're not done until we've turned the universe upside down." With renewed vigor, they pressed on, united in their mission to outwit the simulation and defy the odds. They were the Paradox, a ship of misfits and rebels, and they were ready to face whatever came next. The Paradox hummed with a chaotic energy, like a cat hissing its way through a dog show. Vex Talon stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the shifting screens like a gambler watching her last horse come in. The lights flickered, and the ship's metal skeleton creaked, as if groaning under the weight of their collective stress. It all felt like the universe's idea of a bad joke, but Vex wasn't laughing. Yet. "All right, team," she announced, with the confidence of someone who just told a room of drunks that the bar was closing. "New plan. And when I say plan, I mean something so stupid it just might work." "Stupidity is our specialty," Jax said, lounging in his chair like he hadn't a care in the cosmos. "Remind me again why I'm trusting you with my life." Vex shot back, feigning exasperation. "Because you have no choice," Grady interjected, fingers dancing over his console trying to keep the ship's systems from outright rebellion. "And because we're charming." Vex rolled her eyes, a small smirk escaping despite herself. "Right, here's the deal. Those alien bastards think they can outsmart us, predict our every move, so let's give them exactly what they can't predict. We'll make moves so illogical it'll make their AI brains do backflips." "You mean, act like we've lost our minds?" Dex asked, arching a brow. "Because I can do that. More like behave like we never had one in the first place," Vex clarified, leaning into the idea. "Echo, can you scramble our signals to make them look like, I don't know, a drunk toddler's scribbles?" Echo's digital face flickered, a pixelated grin forming. "Consider it done, Captain. Ready to turn the universe into our personal sandbox." "Perfect," Vex replied, steeling herself for what came next. She knew it was a gamble, but then again, so was everything in this forsaken galaxy. "Let's make them regret ever tuning in to the human comedy channel." As the crew got to work, the paradox began to execute maneuvers that defied both logic and basic principles of space travel. The ship spun in erratic patterns, like a ballerina on a bender, while Grady fed the comms system a diet of gibberish interspersed with random bursts of classical music and alien nursery rhymes. "This is either genius or the dumbest thing we've ever done," Grady said, watching the screens with a mixture of amusement and horror. "Bet on both," Jax replied, his eyes glued to the controls as he piloted the ship with a reckless abandon that bordered on lunacy. "But it's got style." Dex, meanwhile, was busy analyzing the chaos. "Reports are coming in," he said, squinting at his monitor. "The alien simulations are stumbling. They're trying to adapt but crashing like a substandard Windows update." "About time," Vex said, a hint of triumph in her voice. "If they wanted a show, let's give them the climax of a lifetime." "Just to be clear," Jax chimed in, "we're counting on these aliens not having a sense of humor, right? Because if they do, we're screwed." "Humor's a human thing," Vex replied, with the air of someone quoting an ancient adage. "Or at least our brand of it is." For a moment, it seemed their harebrained strategy was working. The alien simulations were sputtering, their logical models unable to process the sheer madness of human unpredictability. But as with all things involving luck and hubris, it didn't take long for the tide to turn. "The simulation's recalibrating," Echo warned, its voice devoid of the usual digital cheeriness. "They're picking up on the unpredictability, adapting faster than a teenager's fashion sense." "Great," Jax muttered, adjusting the ship's trajectory to compensate for the simulated tailspin. "Right when we were starting to enjoy ourselves." "All right, everyone," Vex said, refusing to let panic creep in. "Double down. We need more chaos, more randomness. Make a Rube Goldberg machine look like a straight line." Grady nodded, fingers typing furiously. "I'll reroute power from logic systems to nonsense generators." "Let's see if that fries their circuits." Dex was already recalibrating their data output, ensuring the signals they sent were as sensical as a cat's cradle made by a blindfolded toddler. "We might crash ourselves in the process," he warned, his tone implying he was perfectly fine with that. "What's life without a little risk?" Vex replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Let's show those aliens how humans handle a crisis, by making it worse." As the ship dove headfirst into the abyss of the unpredictable, Vex watched her crew, each one of them driven by stubborn resolve and dark humor. It was a plan so insane only humans could conceive it, and it was beautiful in its own twisted way. "Echo," Vex called out, "give me a status update." "Are we still the universe's biggest headache?" "Affirmative, Captain," Echo replied, a hint of pride in its synthetic voice. "The aliens are scrambling. They're having to pull resources from other simulations to keep up with ours." "Good," Vex said, feeling a perverse satisfaction. "Let's keep them guessing until their circuits melt." "Hey, Vex," Jax shouted over the noise of the ship's overworked engines. "If we survive this, I'm taking up knitting. Safer hobby." "Deal," Vex shot back. "You can make sweaters for all the AI simulations we've sent into therapy." As the paradox continued its erratic dance through the stars, the crew's laughter mingled with the chaos. Their situation was dire, the odds stacked against them, but they had one thing the aliens couldn't: a stubborn refusal to give up. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. "Captain," Echo reported, its digital face flickering back to life, "the aliens are requesting a ceasefire. They're offering a parley." Vex raised an eyebrow, surprise mingling with suspicion. "A ceasefire, just like that? Seems our unconventional methods have given them a headache of galactic proportions," Echo said. "They're willing to negotiate." Vex exchanged a glance with her crew, each of them looking as surprised as she felt. "All right, team, let's see what they want, but let's keep them guessing. We're not out of this mess yet." With a nod, Grady opened a channel, ready to receive the alien transmission. As Vex prepared to face whatever came next, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. They'd turned chaos into their ally, and with any luck, they'd bring this madcap adventure to an end, on their terms. Remember, Vex said, as the alien communication crackled to life, we're unpredictable, unrelenting, and undeniably human. Let's show them what that means. And with that, they plunged headfirst into the unknown, ready to face whatever insanity awaited them on the other side. The paradox was spinning like a politician at a press conference, furiously, erratically, and always just one wrong move away from disaster. Vex Talon, standing at the helm, felt like the universe itself was conspiring to give her a migraine. The lights flickered with the enthusiasm of a dying firefly, and the ship's metal skeleton creaked ominously. It was all going pear-shaped, faster than you could say cosmic catastrophe. Echo, Vex barked, trying to make herself heard over the cacophony of alarms and cursing crew members. Status report. Echo's digital face flickered on the screen, its once proud, pixelated grin now a strained grimace. Captain, my systems are experiencing complications. The alien assault is intensifying. I'm doing my best impression of a cheap Chinese knockoff right now. Great, Vex muttered, rubbing her temples. Just what we need. A rogue AI with performance issues. Grady, fingers dancing over his console like a concert pianist on speed, was trying to keep the ship's systems from outright rebellion. We're losing power across multiple sectors, Cap. It's like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a thimble. Jax, as laid back as ever despite the chaos, glanced over his shoulder with a grin. Hey, at least it's not boring, right? Speak for yourself, Dex chimed in, his face glued to a monitor displaying some very bad news. Our unpredictability strategy is as fresh as a used bandage. The simulations are adapting faster than a politician's excuses. Vex shot him a glare that could have melted steel. Fantastic. We're about to be outsmarted by a bunch of overgrown calculators. Just the ending I was hoping for. The ship shuddered under a fresh barrage of simulated fire, and for a moment, everyone held their breath. This, Vex realized, was what it felt like to be the punchline in someone else's joke. Echo, she called out, trying to keep a lid on the panic bubbling up inside her. Can you still scramble their signals? I can try, Captain, Echo replied, though it sounded more like a deathbed promise than a confident assurance. But their systems are recalibrating faster than a caffeinated squirrel. Perfect, Jax deadpanned. Just when I thought we might get a break, Vex took a deep breath, trying to draw on reserves of calm she wasn't entirely sure existed. Morale was circling the drain, and hope was the last, lonely passenger hanging on for dear life. But giving up wasn't an option, not yet. All right, team, she said, projecting a confidence she didn't feel. We're not done. Not until I say so. We'll find a way through this mess, even if it means kissing our sanity goodbye. Speak for yourself, Grady interjected, sweat beading on his forehead as he furiously typed commands into the console. I lost mine years ago, really. Jax quipped, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I thought you were just naturally crazy, Dex snorted, a welcome sound amidst the chaos. At least we'll go down in a blaze of idiocy. Vex couldn't help but chuckle, despite the situation. If we're going out, we may as well do it with style. For a moment, their shared laughter cut through the tension, a defiant gesture in the face of impending doom. But reality was a relentless beast, and it wasn't long before it came crashing back with all the subtlety of an asteroid impact. The aliens are ramping up their assault, Echo warned, its voice steady despite the chaos. They're pulling resources from other simulations to focus on us. Well, isn't that nice, Vex said, her voice laced with sarcasm. We're the galaxy's latest obsession. Fame at last, Jax quipped. Shame it doesn't come with a paycheck. Grady glanced up from his console, his expression grim. We're running on fumes, Cap. If we don't do something soon, we're going to be as useful as a chocolate teapot. Vex nodded, her mind racing. They needed a miracle, or at least a stroke of luck so outrageous it bordered on divine intervention. All right, everyone, she said, drawing on the last shreds of resolve. Double down on the chaos. Let's make them regret ever tuning in. Got it, Dex replied, already working on another batch of nonsensical data to confuse their digital adversaries. Here's to hoping random acts of stupidity save the day. Vex couldn't help but smile at that. In this crazy universe, it was sometimes the only strategy that made any sense. Echo, she called out, do your worst. I'm already on it, Captain, Echo replied, its voice tinged with a digital smirk. As the paradox danced its erratic ballet through the stars, Vex took a moment to watch her crew. They were a ragtag bunch, misfits, rebels, and one dangerously unpredictable AI, but they were hers and she wouldn't trade them for anything. All right, folks, she said, watching them work with a mixture of pride and terror. Let's show those aliens just what a mess humanity can make when we put our minds to it. The next few minutes were a blur of chaos, a frantic race against time as they hurled everything they had at the simulations. Grady rerouted power, Jax executed maneuvers that defied both logic and common sense, and Dex kept the data stream as incomprehensible as a toddler's finger painting. But despite their best efforts, the tide wasn't turning. The alien simulations were relentless, adapting with a speed that was downright terrifying. Vex felt her heart sink as she realized they were running out of options and time. Echo, she called out, her voice a little more desperate than she intended. What's our status? Not good, Captain, Echo replied, its digital grimace returning. Their systems are stabilizing. Our unpredictability isn't holding up. Vex clenched her fists, frustration bubbling to the surface. They'd come so close only to hit a wall they couldn't break through. It was enough to make her want to scream. Well, this sucks, Jax said, his tone light despite the situation. What's plan B? Vex hesitated, searching for answers in a universe that seemed determined to deny them. But there was nothing, no clever ploy or last-minute save. Just the cold, hard reality of their situation, and the grim understanding that they might not make it out of this one. Captain, Echo said, its voice gentle. We still have the option of negotiating. It might be our only chance. Negotiate. Dex echoed, disbelief etched across his features. With the same aliens who want to use us as their personal entertainment, it might buy us time, Grady suggested, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. And time's about the only thing we've got left. Vex nodded slowly, the weight of their predicament settling heavily on her shoulders. It was a long shot, a last-ditch effort in a galaxy that didn't believe in second chances, but if they didn't try, they were as good as finished. All right, she said, her voice steadying as she made the call. Let's open a channel, see if we can talk some sense into these bastards. Grady nodded, his fingers flying over the console as he worked to establish the connection. Vex took a deep breath, readying herself for whatever came next. They were at their lowest point, with the odds stacked higher than ever, but she wasn't done fighting. Not yet. Channel open, Captain, Grady said, turning to face her. Whenever you're ready. Vex stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the flickering screen before her. This was it, their last stand in a universe that seemed hell-bent on their destruction. And as she prepared to negotiate with their alien adversaries, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, however small. All right, you cosmic voyeurs, she said, her voice carrying a defiant edge. You want a show? Then let's talk. The silence that followed was thick with anticipation, the seconds stretching into eternity as they waited for a response. For a moment, Vex wondered if they'd been too late, if their plea had gone unheard amidst the chaos. But then the screen flickered to life, and a face, alien and inscrutable, appeared, staring back at them with a gaze that seemed to pierce right through her. Human Captain, the alien said, its voice rich and resonant. We accept your offer to negotiate. But know this, your unpredictability is your only currency. Spend it wisely. Vex nodded, a slight smile tugging at her lips despite the situation. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And in this mad, unpredictable universe, sometimes a start was all you needed. With a deep breath, she prepared to face whatever lay ahead, ready to fight for her crew and their future, even if it meant going down in flames. Because in the grand scheme of things, there were worse ways to be remembered. And at the very least, they'd go out with one hell of a bang. Vex rubbed her temples, wondering if her skull might implode before the rest of the paradox did. All right, folks, buckle up. If we're going to throw emotions into the mix, let's make sure they are explosive. Grady smirked, still wrestling with the console like it was a particularly stubborn octopus. Emotions, huh? Haven't tried those since my last divorce, marriage. Jax quipped, not looking up from his screen. I thought you preferred the company of malfunctioning tech. Same level of commitment issues, Grady retorted, fingers flying over the keys. Now let's see if we can turn our emotional baggage into a wrecking ball. Vex glanced at Echo's digital face. Flickering with what she hoped was a semblance of shared irritation rather than just another system glitch. Echo, can you amplify our emotional output, or whatever it is these aliens are vibing to? Echo buzzed, a faint spark of life in its usually monotonous voice. I'll do my best, Captain. Though if it's anything like human drama, we're in for a messier ride than usual. Great, Dex muttered, tapping away furiously. Just what we need. A soap opera in the middle of a cosmic war. Vex turned her icy gaze towards the screen where the alien negotiator's face lingered like a bad hangover. Listen up, you space big brother wannabes, she spoke, injecting a dose of human sarcasm. We humans have a little something called emotions, chaotic, messy, and unpredictable. Let's see how your system handles that. The alien's expression didn't change, although Vex was pretty sure its version of a poker face had nothing on Grady's during poker night. Emotions are but chemical reactions, human. Predictable in their unpredictability. Wow, did you read that off a self-help book? Jax chimed in, his grin infuriatingly laid back even now. Grady snorted. If they did, they skipped the chapter on human insanity. Vex took a deep breath. Out of the frying pan and into the fire, as her late grandmother used to say, usually while setting the kitchen ablaze. Echo, patch emotions into our signal. Let's show them what they are missing. Transmitting now, Echo replied, a hint of amusement in its digital tone. Prepare for emotional turbulence. The seconds dragged like hours, every tick of the clock mocking their dwindling chances. Vex felt the tension in the room ratchet up a notch, everyone on edge as they waited for their next move or their last. Then the ship shivered under an alien barrage, just another day in the life of the doomed. Dex glanced up, his expression one part nervous, two parts resigned humor. Are we really pinning our hopes on a feeling? Desperation makes for strange allies, Vex replied, her voice steady. Besides, what have we got to lose? Other than our dignity. Haven't had that since the last shore leave, Jax added, his chuckle cutting through the tension like a hot knife through butter, or through their latest abysmal mission report. Grady's console sparked, a tiny fireworks show that lacked the excitement of the real thing. Systems are stabilizing, Captain. Seems like the aliens are having a bit of a meltdown with our input. Finally, a meltdown that works in our favor, Vex muttered, adrenaline fueling her sudden burst of optimism. Let's keep up the pressure. If they want emotions, we'll give them the whole dysfunctional family dinner. Echo, she barked, amplify the signal. Let's make them regret thinking they could handle human emotional chaos. On it, Captain, Echo replied, its voice carrying more than a hint of mischief. It was a good sign, or so Vex hoped. The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity, each crew member playing their part in the mad dash to keep the ship from imploding. Grady's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power with the grace of a man making deals with the devil. Jax, meanwhile, was executing maneuvers that made Vex's stomach do somersaults, all while maintaining his trademark grin. Dex was knee-deep in data streams, adding layers of confusion to the already chaotic signal they were pumping out. This is like jazz but with less structure, he commented, almost to himself. Jazz is chaos too, Jax replied, just with more people pretending to understand it. Amidst the chaos, Vex felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe it was the knowledge that they were finally playing on their terms, or maybe it was just the acceptance that insanity was their new normal. Either way, she wasn't about to question it. "Echo status report," she called out, her voice cutting through the din like a knife. "The alien systems are struggling to adapt, Captain," Echo reported, its tone almost smug. "They can't predict what they can't understand." Vex felt a smile tugging at her lips, a fierce pride swelling in her chest. "Let's keep them off balance," she instructed. "We're not done until they're running home with their tails between their legs. Do aliens even have tails?" Jax wondered aloud, dodging another simulated attack with infuriating ease. "If they don't, we'll give them some," Grady replied, his grin wide. "This is turning out to be more fun than our last encounter with the IRS." The ship shuddered again, a reminder that they weren't out of the woods yet. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Vex dared to hope. They were turning the tide, proving that human unpredictability and emotion was a force to be reckoned with. "Keep it up, team," Vex encouraged, her voice carrying a note of steely determination. "We're not just surviving, we're fighting back." Just then, Echo chimed in, its voice carrying an edge of excitement. "The aliens are attempting to retreat, Captain. They're diverting resources back to other simulations. It seems we've overwhelmed their predictive models." Vex let out a slow breath, relief washing over her like a wave. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd managed to outwit their cosmic voyeurs. But the battle wasn't over yet. There was still work to be done. "Prepare to chase them down," Vex ordered, steel in her voice. "We'll make sure they think twice before messing with us again." "Ah, payback," Dex mused, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. "The only currency that never loses value." Jax adjusted the ship's course, his grin as sharp as ever. "Let's make it one hell of a show." With that, the Paradox surged forward, a comet of chaos hurtling through the stars. Vex watched her crew, her makeshift family, working together with a grim determination that filled her with pride. "Emotions, huh?" Grady remarked, glancing over at Vex. "Who knew they'd save our asses?" Vex chuckled, shaking her head. "In this universe, anything's possible, just goes to show," Jax added, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Never underestimate the power of a good emotional breakdown. And here I thought those were just for family reunions," Dex quipped, his focus never wavering from the data streams. Vex felt a warmth spreading through her chest, the kind of contentment that came from knowing you were exactly where you belonged. They were a ragtag bunch, each with their own quirks and flaws, but together they were unstoppable. "All right, team," she said, her voice carrying a note of finality. "Let's finish this." As they pursued their alien adversaries, Vex couldn't help but marvel at the power of human emotion. It was messy, unpredictable, and often downright infuriating, but it was also their greatest strength. "Echo," Vex called out, feeling more connected to her crew and ship than ever before. "Keep an eye on those signals. Let's make sure they get the message loud and clear." "Consider it done, Captain," Echo replied, its voice carrying a note of camaraderie that hadn't been there before. Grady continued to coax the ship's systems into cooperating, his hands moving with a practiced ease that spoke of years spent in the trenches. "How's that for unpredictable, huh?" "Pretty damn impressive," Vex admitted, watching her crew with a mix of admiration and gratitude. They'd come a long way, and she knew their journey was far from over. But for now, they'd won a crucial battle, and that was enough. As the Paradox chased its retreating foes through the stars, Vex felt a renewed sense of purpose. They might be the underdogs in a universe that seemed determined to chew them up and spit them out, but they weren't going down without a fight. Not now, not ever. "All right, team," she said, her voice firm and confident. "Let's show these cosmic voyeurs just what humanity's made of." They weren't just a crew, they were family. And together they were unstoppable. Vex Talon surveyed her chaotic bridge, feeling an absurd sense of satisfaction in the calamity. The ship was barely holding together. Their alien foes were as confused as a space traveler at a quantum mechanics lecture, and her crew was firing on all cylinders, or at least the ones that weren't currently sparking. "Echo status," she barked, keeping her voice steady amidst the chaos. "The aliens are in disarray, Captain," Echo reported, its voice carrying an odd note of triumph. Our emotional barrage has left them as clueless as a vegan at a barbecue. Perfect, she muttered, allowing herself a brief moment to relish the havoc they'd wrought. They'd thrown a wrench into the aliens' well-oiled machines with the kind of recklessness that could only be described as classically human. Jax was busy at his console, his fingers dancing over the controls with all the grace of a cat burglar at a jewelry heist. If we keep this up, we'll have them running for the nearest intergalactic therapist. Or a good bar, Grady chuckled, his hands a blur as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. What do you think aliens drink? Space juice, probably some unholy mixture of logic and superiority complex, Dex chimed in, not looking up from his data streams. Makes you wonder how they ever got this far. Well, they didn't have to deal with us, did they? Vex replied, a vicious grin spreading across her face. It was time to push their advantage. All right, team, let's break their simulations for good. Make them wish they'd picked on someone else. Like a preschooler, Jax quipped, executing a maneuver that made the ship shiver but left the aliens firing at empty space. Or a government-subsidized AI. The paradox surged forward, cutting through the cosmic void like a blade through warm butter. Vex felt a thrill zip through her veins, the adrenaline high of combat mixed with the grim satisfaction of outplaying the universe's most pompous overlords. Echo, amplify those signals. Let's throw every human emotion we can muster at them. Fear, anger, existential dread. You know, the usual. Consider them scrambled, Captain, Echo replied, a hint of amusement in its digital tone. It's like a cosmic karaoke where we're the ones screaming into the mic. Dex chuckled, though his focus remained on his console. I hope they enjoy the sound of a billion voices crying out in confusion. You've got a knack for the dramatic, Dex, Grady noted, his hands never stopping. But hey, if it works, it works. Vex felt a sense of camaraderie envelop the bridge, her crew united in their cause. They were more than a team. They were a group of misfits bound by shared insanity and the absurdity of their mission. Here we go, Jax announced, his voice gleeful as the paradox swerved between incoming fire, dodging laser blasts with a precision that bordered on miraculous. Nice flying, Jax, Vex called out, bracing herself against the jerking motion of the ship. Remind me to never let you drive my car. Jax just grinned, his eyes never leaving his screens. Pretty sure your car doesn't hit warp speeds, Cap. The ship shuddered again, this time with the force of their own signal pushing back against the alien onslaught. Vex watched as the alien simulations began to falter, their predictive models collapsing under the weight of human unpredictability. Echo, what's the status on their systems? She asked, keeping her voice steady despite the tumult around her. They're glitching, Captain, Echo replied, its voice carrying a note of satisfaction. We've hit them where it hurts. Their simulations are failing. Good, Vex said, a fierce pride swelling in her chest. They were doing it, actually doing it. Let's keep it up. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The bridge was a flurry of activity, each crew member working with a single-minded focus that belied the chaos of their situation. It was like watching a master symphony, if every musician was slightly drunk and the conductor was a madwoman. Grady let out a whoop of triumph as his console lit up with positive readings. We're in the clear, Captain. They're pulling back, regrouping. Looks like they've had enough of our emotional roller coaster. Finally, someone appreciates our drama, Dex deadpanned, though there was a note of relief in his voice. All right, team, Vex called out, a hard edge to her voice. Let's push through and show them we're not just going to roll over. Jax adjusted their course, the ship moving with a fluid grace that belied its ramshackle state. Full speed ahead, Cap. Let's give them a goodbye they won't forget, like running into an ex at a wedding, Grady said, shaking his head with a grin. Vex couldn't help but laugh, the sound filled with a bittersweet triumph. They'd turned the tide, shown these cosmic puppeteers the power of human emotion and unpredictability. It was a victory, no matter how temporary. Echo, keep us connected to their systems. I want a full report on their retreat, she ordered, feeling the weight of command settle back onto her shoulders. Already on it, Captain, Echo replied, its voice carrying a hint of camaraderie that hadn't been there before. Seems they're pulling out of our sector entirely. We've overwhelmed their simulations. Good, Vex said, her voice firm. Let's make sure they don't forget this lesson anytime soon. As the paradox surged into the void, Vex felt a sense of peace settle over her. They'd done the impossible, turned the tables on an enemy that had underestimated the power of human emotion and chaos. Here's to unpredictability, Jack said, raising an imaginary glass as the ship sped through the stars. And to never backing down, Dex added, a rare smile gracing his features. Vex let out a slow breath, feeling the tension of the battle ebb away. They'd won, at least for now, but she knew their journey was far from over. All right, team, she said, her voice carrying a note of finality. Let's show these cosmic voyeurs just what humanity's made of. As they pursued their retreating foes, Vex couldn't help but marvel at the power of emotion. It was messy, unpredictable, and often downright infuriating, but it was also their greatest strength. And as long as they had it, they'd remain a force to be reckoned with. Echo, keep an eye on those signals, she instructed, her voice steady. I want to know the moment they try something sneaky. Consider it done, Captain, Echo replied, a note of determination in its voice. The paradox hurtled through the stars, a comet of chaos and defiance. Vex watched her crew, her makeshift family, with a fierce pride, knowing they'd face whatever came next together. Here's to the next battle, Grady said, his voice light but his eyes serious. And to never losing our edge, Jax added, a wicked grin on his face. Vex nodded, feeling more connected to her crew and ship than ever before. They were a ragtag bunch, each with their own quirks and flaws, but together they were unstoppable. All right, team, she said, her voice carrying a note of finality. Let's finish this. As they pursued their alien adversaries, Vex felt a renewed sense of purpose. They might be the underdogs in a universe that seemed determined to chew them up and spit them out, but they weren't going down without a fight. Not now, not ever. All right, Echo, Vex called out, her voice firm and confident. Let's make sure they get the message loud and clear. Consider it done, Captain, Echo replied, its voice carrying a note of camaraderie that hadn't been there before. Grady continued to coax the ship systems into cooperating, his hands moving with a practiced ease that spoke of years spent in the trenches. How's that for unpredictable, huh? Pretty damn impressive, Vex admitted, watching her crew with a mix of admiration and gratitude. They'd come a long way, and she knew their journey was far from over. But for now, they'd won a crucial battle, and that was enough. As the paradox chased its retreating foes through the stars, Vex felt a renewed sense of purpose. They might be the underdogs in a universe that seemed determined to chew them up and spit them out, but they weren't going down without a fight. Not now, not ever. All right, team, she said, her voice firm and confident. Let's show these cosmic voyeurs just what humanity's made of. They weren't just a crew, they were family. And together, they were unstoppable. The paradox drifted through the aftermath like a drunken sailor swaggering out of a bar brawl. Vex stood on the bridge, arms crossed, surveying the chaos they'd left in their wake. The screens flickered and sparked, a reminder of just how close they'd come to becoming space dust. But against all odds, they'd survived, and that was worth a smirk or two. Look at this mess, Grady said, shaking his head as he nudged a twisted panel back into place with his boot. We'd have better luck using duct tape and prayers. If duct tape doesn't work, you're not using enough, Jax quipped, fingers still dancing over his console like they had a mind of their own. Besides, you ever seen a spaceship held together by sheer spite? I'm looking at one, Dex replied, not bothering to look up from his data streams. And here I thought my last ship was a floating junkyard. Who knew being unpredictable could be so damn predictable? Vex mused aloud, letting a wry smile play at the corners of her mouth. But hey, at least we've proven that emotions aren't just for making bad decisions and terrible art, Grady snorted. If these aliens had to watch a single human soap opera, they'd have given up and gone home ages ago. Or started drinking the space juice, Dex added, his voice as dry as a desert wind. Echo's digital face flickered onto the screen, its expression one of digital triumph. Captain, I've monitored the retreat. The aliens have withdrawn completely. The sector is clear. Looks like they couldn't handle our emotional roller coaster, Jack said with a grin. I guess they didn't read the warnings about motion sickness. A little nausea never hurt anyone, Vex replied, her voice laced with satisfaction. And if they did, well, it's not like they can sue us for damages. The crew shared a laugh, the sound a soft balm against the stark reality of their situation. They were alive, victorious, and most importantly, still unpredictably human. What do we do now? Grady asked, leaning against a console with the casual ease of a man who had survived one too many scrapes. We celebrate, Vex replied, her grin as sharp as a blade, and maybe fix this flying heap of chaos before it decides to disassemble itself. Ah, the sweet smell of victory, Dex said, breathing deeply. Or is that just the stench of fried circuits? The ship groaned in response, as if it took offense at the mere suggestion of falling apart. But the truth was undeniable. The paradox had taken a beating. Inside, the bridge was a tangle of flickering lights and frayed wires, but the crew was still intact, standing strong amid the wreckage. So, Captain, Jack said, turning in his seat to face her. What's our next move? I'm assuming we're not going to just float here until the next round of cosmic insanity decides to pay us a visit. Not if I can help it, Vex replied, her tone firm but laced with humor. First, we get this place back in working order. Then we figure out where the universe needs a good dose of human unpredictability next, just like that. Grady asked, raising an eyebrow. You make it sound so easy. Oh, it never is, Vex shot back, a laugh bubbling up despite herself. But when has that ever stopped us? The crew shared a moment of camaraderie, the kind that only those who've faced death together can truly understand. They'd been through hell and back, but they'd come out stronger for it, bonded by the sheer lunacy of their mission. All right, Echo, Vex said, turning her attention back to the digital face on the screen. Let's get the systems back online. I want a full diagnostic and an inventory of what we've got left. And maybe see about getting some new bathroom tiles while you're at it. Consider it done, Captain, Echo replied, its voice carrying a note of loyalty that hadn't been there before. Though I'm afraid the tile department is running low on resources. Figures, Jax muttered, shaking his head. Can't even get decent decor in a galactic war zone. Well, we'll just have to make do, Vex replied, her voice light despite the odds stacked against them. Like always, they worked in synchrony, each crew member playing their part in bringing the paradox back from the brink. It was a labor of love and madness, the kind that only those who've stared into the void can appreciate. So what do you think the next set of aliens will throw at us? Dex asked casually, his fingers flying over the console as he rerouted power to critical systems. Hopefully something less predictably logical, Grady replied, his tone tinged with irony. It's not like we've cornered the market on chaos, after all. Speak for yourself, Jax shot back, a playful grin on his face. I'd like to think we've got a pretty good handle on it. Vex couldn't help but chuckle, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. They were a ragtag bunch, a far cry from the polished crews that typically graced the galaxy's more respectable ships. But they had heart and an unyielding spirit, and in the end, that was all that mattered. All right, she said, her voice ringing with authority and warmth. Let's get this ship back in shape. The universe isn't going to save itself. With a renewed sense of purpose, they worked tirelessly to repair the paradox, patching up wounds both physical and metaphorical. It was a testament to their resilience, their refusal to back down even in the face of impossible odds. Hours later, as the ship hummed with a newfound energy, Vex stood on the bridge, her crew gathered around her. They'd done it, they'd turned the tide, shown the universe that humanity was more than the sum of its parts. This calls for a drink, Grady announced, his voice filled with the kind of enthusiasm that only the promise of alcohol could muster. "To hell with the Reds, and to hell with anyone who says we can't," Dex added, a rare smile playing on his lips. Vex raised an imaginary glass, her gaze sweeping over her crew. They were more than colleagues, they were family, bonded by the chaos they'd shared. "To unpredictability," she said, her voice carrying a note of triumph. "And to never losing our edge," Jax added, the playful glint in his eyes a testament to their shared resilience. As they toasted their victory, Vex couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. They'd faced overwhelming odds, stood against forces that sought to reduce them to mere data points in a grand cosmic experiment. And through it all, they'd remained true to themselves, flawed, unpredictable, and utterly human. "All right, team," she said, her voice filled with the kind of determination that could move mountains. "Let's see what the universe throws at us next." With a renewed sense of purpose, they set their sights on the stars, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were the crew of the Paradox, masters of chaos in a universe that thrived on order, and they wouldn't have it any other way. As the ship surged forward, cutting a path through the darkness, Vex felt a sense of peace settle over her. They'd faced their demons, embraced the chaos, and come out stronger for it. And as long as they had each other, they'd face whatever came next with grit, humor, and a healthy dose of unpredictability. "Echo," Vex called out, her voice carrying a note of finality. "Keep an eye on those systems. We've got a long road ahead." "Consider it done, Captain," Echo replied, its digital face displaying a hint of pride. With their course set and their spirits high, the crew of the Paradox plunged into the unknown, ready to take on whatever the universe had in store. They were a force to be reckoned with, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. "Here's to the next adventure," Grady said, his voice filled with anticipation. "And to never losing sight of who we are," Dex added, his tone as steady as a rock. Vex nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. They were the underdogs in a universe that sought to tame them, but they wouldn't be tamed. They were human, unpredictable, and proud, and that was their greatest strength. And as they sailed into the vast expanse of space, the crew of the Paradox knew one thing for certain. They'd face every challenge head-on, with humor, resilience, and a touch of madness. After all, what was the point of surviving the cosmos if you couldn't have a little fun along the way? "All right, team," Vex said, her voice filled with confidence and warmth. "Let's show this universe what we're made of." With that, they journeyed onward, a ragtag crew of misfits bound by the chaos they embraced, ready to face whatever adventures lay ahead. Together, they were unstoppable, a testament to the power of unpredictability and the enduring strength of the human spirit.